Hello everybody, and welcome to this presentation of the Elder Scrolls lore. Not too long ago I talked about the main story of Arena, the first installment of the Elder Scrolls series. Although it was spiced up a bit in the lore retroactively, Arena's main story from a player's perspective is incredibly simple. Escape the prison, assemble the staff, kill the evil wizard. The end. It's time now that we move along to the next game, The Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall, released September 20th, 1996. Arena's plot was as straightforward as it gets. I wonder how Daggerfall compares. Oh no. It's completely non-linear. Big chunks of the story are in optional quest lines. There's a reputation system entirely behind the scenes. Some quests don't trigger if your reputation with a certain faction isn't high enough, including the one that explains what Numidium is. There are two books called The War of Betany. They explain crucial events and character motivations, but they're full of propaganda and differ from each other completely. There are 5, but technically 4 kingdoms involved. These two call themselves kings. What are they kings of? King of the Worms? King of the Lanes at the bowling alley? Your friend, the Emperor, lies to you about the content and significance of the letter he once found. Everyone lies to you. The Totem of Tiber Septim lies to you. This guy ain't in Tiber's bloodline. Neither is this guy. I have serious doubts about this lady. Besides, she's just the regent. Why not give the totem to a cow? He's king of the farm, I swear. They had to explain the entire backstory of the main plot in the official strategy guide. The game has multiple endings. This says there are 6 different endings, but isn't that technically 8? Wait, is that one even possible? Can you really proceed to the ending without giving away the totem? I can't find any evidence of this being a thing, so why would it say that? Does any of this even matter now that Dragon Break? Good gods. I know you couldn't have realized this 25 years ago, but you really didn't do me any favors here, did you, Ted? Okay, so in order to understand any of what's happening, we first need to go over the main factions involved, of which there are 7. Foremost are the 3 major kingdoms of Iliac Bay: the eponymous Daggerfall, ruled by Kinglisanis; Sentinel, ruled by King Cameron; and Wayrest, ruled jointly by King Eadweir and Queen Baranziah. Daggerfall and Sentinel just got done fighting the aforementioned War of Betany. To make a long and contentious story short, they disputed over control of Betany Island, strategically located at the mouth of the bay. The armies ultimately clashed at the Battle of Cringane Field, in which both Kings Lysandas and Cameron were killed. The battle, and thus the war, were won by Daggerfall. Rule of the victorious kingdom passed to Lysandas' son, Gothred. The heir of Sentinel had yet to come of age, so the widowed Queen Akarithe was named interim regent. The difficult-to-pronounce Princess Abka'ai of Sentinel was married off to King Gothred. This was a gesture of peace according to some, a spoil of war according to others. Wayrest was neutral in the War of Betany. The island on the far end of the bay was of little concern to them. Besides, they had an impending crisis of royal succession to deal with, in addition to our 4th contender right on their doorstep, the Minat tribe of orcs in the Hrothgarian Mountains, led by the simply named Gorthwog. Gorthwog's motivation is simple. He wants recognition for the orcish people of Tamriel in the establishment of a legitimate nation for the orcs. Naturally, Gorthwog sees himself as the sovereign of the currently unrecognized kingdom of Orsinium. The dark forces of the region have their hats in the ring as well. There's Mannimarco, King of Worms, leader of the Necromancers, who has a lot of backstory and connected lore throughout the series. For at least 2,000 years, he worked his various dark schemes on Tamriel. For now, we're only concerned with his role in the story of Daggerfall. Trust me, he's on my to-do list. In opposition to Mannimarco, and no less frightening, is the Underking. Not that Underking. His very existence is all but mythical, so careful is he to keep his machinations in the shadows. According to legend, the Underking is an old and very powerful undead. Similar to a lich, but something else. the Underking can neither live nor die, having mysteriously lost his heart, for which he and his agents tirelessly search. It probably goes without saying that the Underking does exist. You will never find him, however. If so inclined, he will find you. The last of the parties involved is where our story begins, the Empire of Cyrodiil, ruled by Septim VII. Our protagonist will be known to history as the hero of Daggerfall, but for now, they are simply an agent of the Empire. The agent is one of only a few whom the Emperor trusts so shortly after his imprisonment by the crazed Jaeger Tharn. Uriel VII summons the agent for a meeting in the dead of night, Imperial Battle Mage Okado the only other soul present for the discussion. Kinglisanis of Daggerfall, an old friend and faithful servant of the Empire, now dead for over a year, is haunting his former kingdom. His unresting spirit rages incomprehensibly. The only words discernible are his desire for vengeance. The Emperor assigns his agent the mission of discovering the reason for Lysanis' curse and bringing peace to his tormented soul. There is one other, smaller task. Uriel VII had sent a letter to Lysanis' queen Minisera several years prior. The letter was of a, quote, sentimental and personal nature. It was never delivered. If it were to be leaked, this letter would make for an awkward situation. The Emperor wants it found and destroyed, and offers no additional information as to its content. The agent sets sail for Daggerfall the following day. They encounter an unnaturally rough storm en route and are shipwrecked on the coast. After struggling their way through a labyrinthine system of caves, they emerge on the other side to begin their quest. It's at this point that the structure of Daggerfall's narrative becomes an issue. You see, I can't convey this story simply by saying the agent did this and then they did that. That's because, for the most part, there is no and then. Questlines branch off and intersect in ways that make explaining this as any kind of chronological sequence impossible. The plot thread here isn't so much a thread as a Gordian knot. Rather than try in vain to unravel it, I'm going to take a cue from Alexander and slice the thing in half. In order to lay out the elements of Daggerfall's main story, we need to remove the one component tying everything together, the player character. I realized in racking my brain over this that from a lore perspective, the story of Daggerfall isn't about what the agent does, it's about what they uncover. The way in which the agent goes about their investigation and discovery of these facts is absolutely crucial when you're playing the game. That's not what I'm doing. For my purposes, the agent's role in the story is almost irrelevant. By taking them out of the equation, we can sever all those links, look at the raw facts contained in each questline, toss out the extraneous, and rearrange the bits and pieces so they make at least some kind of sense. In a game, this sort of disconnected story structure can work, and to their credit, this is entirely appropriate for the story that Daggerfall's designers wanted to tell. In a video format, however, it's nothing but a hindrance. Sorry, Ted. I'm about to dissect your creation with all the delicacy of an axe. First, let's deal with the matter of Kinglisanis' ghost. The official story from both sides of the conflict is that Lysanis was killed at the Battle of Cringane Field after sustaining an arrow to the throat. That's a lie. The truth is somewhat more tragic. At the outset of the War of Betany, Lysanis was having an affair with the court mage of Daggerfall, Medora Dureni. When Queen Minisera got wind of the relationship, she had Medora banished. Lysanis then decided that he'd rather give up his crown than leave his lover. As the Battle of Cringane Field loomed, the king made an arrangement with his son and heir, Prince Gothred. Lysanis would disappear into the night before the battle. An impersonator wearing the king's armor would take his place. The double would be killed, and everyone would believe the king was dead, thus leaving Gothred to take the throne and Lysanis to run away with his love. The first part of the plan goes smoothly, and Lysanis makes his getaway. During the Battle of Cringane Field, an unnatural fog descends upon the combatants. Concealed in the cloud, Gothred shoots and kills the impersonator. When the haze lifts, the hapless fellow is taken to Gothred and the royal healer, who both certify the king is dead. Gothred is hastily crowned at the scene and leads the Daggerfall army to victory. Later, a funeral is held with the king's double ceremoniously blessed and cremated, still wearing the king's raiment. Everything would have gone according to plan had it not been for one Lord Woodbourne. Woodborn is commander of the Wayrest military and betrothed to Princess Elisana. As alluded to earlier, the royal succession of Wayrest is in contention. With King Eadwyr's advancing age, a crisis is imminent. Those vying for the crown are Elisana, daughter of King Eadwyr, and Helseth, son of Queen Baranziah. If Elisana ascends upon the death of the old king, Lord Woodborn could effectively be king. The claim of Helseth, however, has steadily been gaining traction. The future of the crown is not as certain as it once was. Woodborn is therefore seeking allies who would support Elisana's claim. He already has Gorthwog on his side on the condition of backing Orsinium's bid for independence. He's been trying to get Daggerfall to commit as well, but has been repeatedly refused by Lysandus. Woodborn provides an impoverished nobleman from outside Wayrest to serve as Lysandus' double at Cringane Field, then leads the king and his company away to join Medora at her castle on Balfira Isle. They don't make it that far. Woodborn plans to attain Daggerfall's support by way of its new king and wants nothing to interfere. Lysandus is a loose end. Woodborn lures the king away from the troop and stabs him in the back. A party of orcs led by Gorthwog ambushes and slaughters the rest of the company. The king's body is hacked to bits and unceremoniously tossed into a catacomb. Woodborn figures the remains would be good leverage in case King Gothred proves uncooperative. He leaves what's left of Lysandus as is, murdered, mangled, and without blessing. This betrayal and desecration are the source of the curse upon Lysandus' soul. His spirit will not rest until his rage is quenched, his murderer slain, and the truth exposed. The Emperor's agent enlists the help of Medora to concoct a substance which will calm Lysandus' spirit. With that done, the ghost is able to speak and reveals the true circumstances of his death. The agent tracks down and kills Woodborn. They then bring evidence of Woodborn's treachery to those who would serve justice. The villain's name and fortune are destroyed besides the man himself. With vengeance fully realized, Lysandus can at last rest in peace. That's one part of the agent's mission accomplished, ostensibly the reason they were sent to Ilic Bay in the first place. There's just the matter of the Emperor's letter to wrap up. A lesser request, he said. He would be most relieved to have it destroyed. This trifling scrap of paper is but a small errand. The agent just happens to be in a position to take care of it. You know, whenever they can get around to it, since they're in the neighborhood and all. Uriel VII's casual attitude towards his lost letter is a total facade. The tormented soul of King Lysandus was a convenient excuse to send in the best person for the real job. The destruction of a letter so dangerous that not even a trusted Imperial agent can be allowed to know its contents. To understand why, we need to briefly go back in time. As covered in a previous episode, the legendary Tiber Septim revitalized and expanded the Cyrodiilic Empire at a rate unmatched in the history of Tamriel. The entire continent was conquered, but military might hadn't been enough to finish the job. In order to defeat the strongest remaining kingdoms of the elves, Tiber Septim activated Numidium. The gigantic war machine was originally fabricated by the Dwemer and reconstructed by battle mage Zurin Arctus. The golem was powered by the Mantella, a gem containing, in part, the soul of Zurin Arctus. Arctus did not die when a hole was blasted through his chest and his soul was stolen. In his undeath, Arctus destroyed Numidium, and in the resulting explosion, scattered its pieces across the land. The Mantella was lost. The Blades had then made it their mission to recover the fragments and rebuild Numidium. Arctus sought to retrieve his lost soul. Over time, the memory of Zurin Arctus faded into myth, and he became known only as the Underking. 400 years later, shortly before the time of our story, the Blades' task was nearly complete. Numidium was whole once again, but for one missing component, the Mantella. The Blades hadn't found any trace of it. Despite the long centuries of searching, the Underking had also not been able to track down his stolen life force. However, someone else did. Nulfaga, mother of King Lysandus and a mystic of considerable power, discovered the Mantella's location. She contacted Uriel Septim VII and offered him the information, but only on the condition that Numidium would not be a threat to her son's power. Nulfaga had the unfortunate misconception that the Emperor would be willing to bargain for the Mantella's whereabouts. The Imperial spy network was extensive, and Uriel VII wasn't going to let some old sorceress call the shots. One of his agents, Brysiana, was undercover in the royal court of Daggerfall. She was ideally suited to exert pressure on the Queen Mother and get her to give up the gem's location. Nulfaga must have been powerful indeed to have found the Mantella, and Uriel VII was understandably paranoid. He didn't dare send his orders by magical communication lest they be intercepted. Instead, he wrote a letter. The letter. The message, of course, was not sent directly to Brysiana. It was addressed instead to the Queen of Daggerfall. In her court capacity, the spy would see the letter first and be tipped off by a special seal indicating that the message was for her. Uriel VII passed his letter to a priest who would act as courier. The priest was delayed, however, by the outbreak of a minor skirmish in the area, the War of Betany. They were able to hand the letter off to a knight of Daggerfall who could more easily complete the delivery. By the time of the message's eventual arrival, the war was over. So the letter was late. What's the problem? Well, the Emperor claimed he had sent the letter to Minnesera, but that's not exactly true. It was addressed to the Queen of Daggerfall. The knight simply does what was asked and delivers the letter accordingly, to the Queen of Daggerfall, Abka. The former Princess of Sentinel reads the letter, doesn't fully grasp the magnitude of its contents, but knows it was never meant for her eyes. She files it away, not knowing what else to do. Queen Abkai's attendant, while not having read the message itself, sees her lady's reaction to it and knows the intrinsic value of a letter from the Emperor. She tips off the local thieves guild, who of course steal the letter, then proceed to sell it. The letter is passed on to the highest bidder, Gorthwog. We don't know how much of the letter Gorthwog understands, but he's definitely not stupid. At the very least, he recognizes the significance of the object the letter mentions, and sees that the powers of Iliac Bay would fight over its control. Any conflict that weakens the kingdoms of the Bay would strengthen Orsinium. Gorthwog makes copies of the letter and sells it to, as far as we can tell, everyone. The agent uncovers all of this, including the original letter, and brings it to Minnesera. I mean, might as well. What's the point of destroying it now that the information is out there? What exactly does the letter contain that make it so valuable and so dangerous? Naturally, this wouldn't be the Elder Scrolls if there weren't any conflicting sources. The plot summary in the Daggerfall Chronicles says one thing, while the letter itself in the game says something else. When in doubt, in-game sources always win, so that's what I'm going with. Uriel VII's letter makes no mention of the Mantella or of Nulfaga having found it. What it says is that the Totem of Tiber Septim has been found, which means that the power behind Tiber Septim, i.e. Numidium, could be unleashed again upon the world. Now, you might be asking, what is the Totem of Tiber Septim? I'm sorry to say that you won't get much of an answer at this time. There are no references whatsoever to this artifact outside the context of Daggerfall. All we truly know is that the totem was created by Zurin Arctis, and it allowed Tiber Septim to control Numidium once it had been activated. Without the totem, the Great Golem would go on a mindless rampage. Additionally, the totem cannot be wielded by just anyone. If picked up by an ordinary person, it will telepathically communicate to that individual, saying, "Know this now and resolutely. You are not worthy to carry the Totem of Tiber Septim. Only those of his bloodline may carry me." For a time, the totem was in the possession of the Blades. It mysteriously disappeared. It then just as mysteriously reappeared in the castle of Lord Woodbourne. The Emperor had learned of this fact and included it in his letter, along with the urge that the totem must be recovered and sent back to the Empire. The Blades raided Woodbourne Hall, but the totem was nowhere to be found. It had changed hands again, this time to King Gothrid. Whether Gothrid obtained the totem from Woodbourne directly or via the same mysterious circumstances as before isn't known. Regardless, he has it. The agent breaks into the treasury of Castle Daggerfall and retrieves the Totem of Tiber Septim. They learn that they won't be able to hold it themselves forever. The totem will eventually find its own way to a capable owner. Thus, the agent has the opportunity and responsibility to make that choice. They will decide who in the Bay should be granted this incredible power. I need a couple of minutes before we get to the endings, because this whole totem business raises some pretty big questions. What actually is the Totem of Tiber Septim? What is it made of? How was it made? Zurin Arctis created it, but how did he even know that such an object would be necessary? Did he work from Dwemer plans? That is how he reconstructed the golem itself, but if that's the case, then why can't another totem be fabricated? After all, the blades didn't seem to have any trouble putting Numidium back together. They must have had access to the same resources that Arctis had. Clearly, the totem is more than a mere physical object. So again, what is it? By what mechanism does it control Numidium? Bluetooth? That would explain how Numidium destroys everything it touches. What does controlling Numidium mean exactly? Does the totem tell Numidium specifically where to go and who to vaporize, or is it just like an IFF that indicates who not to obliterate? Either way, how? How does the totem teleport between different locations? How can it use telepathy? Is the totem conscious, or was that like a recorded message?
I'm sorry, but your attempt to commit mass destruction cannot be completed right now.
I could go much further, but we don't have the time. The point is, the Totem of Tiber Septim makes little sense, and there are no concrete answers to be found. Any attempt to explain the totem beyond these few facts would be going into speculation, and that's where I'm leaving it for now. Once they have the totem, the agent is contacted by the main faction leaders requesting/demanding that it be handed over. They each offer various reasons, assurances, threats, and/or bribes to back up their claim to the totem. The agent must decide which of the 7 is the most worthy. Once the decision has been made and the totem passed on, the agent is telepathically contacted by Nilfgaard. She senses that the totem has found a worthy host and beckons the agent to come see her in order to complete the work they started and to seal their choice in the annals of history. Nilfgaard at last reveals the location of the Mantella. It was hidden away in a realm of Aetherius. How it got there is anyone's guess. Nilfgaard transports the agent to the Mantellan Crux. Simply touching the Mantella is enough to transport both the agent and the gem back to the mortal plane. When the Mantella is released, it makes its way to whomever has been given the Totem of Tiber Septim. These are the possible outcomes. Gothrid, Eadweir, and Akarethi would each use the power of Numidium to lay waste to their respective enemies and establish their kingdom as the dominant power of Iliac Bay. Gorthwog would do the same thing, and manage to carve out a new homeland for the Orcs of Tamriel. Never again would the equality of the Orcish people be disputed by the Empire. Uriel Septim VII would also use the power of Numidium. He would annihilate the armies of the rebellious lesser kingdoms of Tamriel, reaffirming the indomitable power of the Empire. Mannimarco, King of Worms, would command the Mantella itself into his grasp. He would use the raw power within to ascend from his mortal frame and join the ranks of the gods. All the world would feel the torment issued forth by the god of worms. The Underking, at long last reunited with his stolen heart, would take the Mantella's power into himself. For a brief moment, he would escape his undeath, returning to life. He would then realize his ultimate desire and bestow upon himself the peace granted by a final and restful death. 7 possible endings, any one of which would reshape Iliac Bay forever, and in completely distinct ways. Of course, now we must ask, when looking at Daggerfall's story as a piece of lore, which ending is what really happened? The answer is all of them, at the same time. What does that mean, and how is it even possible? That is a subject I've been putting off for a long time. It's a complicated one, so I'm afraid it'll have to wait just a little bit longer. Daggerfall's story is a challenging one to unravel. I believe I've done it the most justice I possibly can. The best aspect of this story, which I unfortunately cannot reflect here, is that the journey of investigating, discovering, and piecing the story together is itself a part of the story. This is the kind of narrative that can really only work in an interactive format. Even to this day, more than 25 years later, very few games have told a story like this. I'm not saying the execution was perfect, but to even attempt this is an exceptional feat. The fact that Daggerfall still has an active and dedicated community is a testament to the quality of its world building and storytelling. I feel the need to point out one person in particular who painted these incredible updated character portraits. I couldn't find a good way to contact Askanarin to get their blessing to use these, but I gathered that they probably wouldn't have minded. I just want to extend them my personal appreciation and gratitude. Thank you. Work like this exemplifies the passion still felt by the fans of this game. Along with projects like Daggerfall Unity and the Wayward Realms, it's clear that there are those out there who are hungry for more. I regrettably didn't actually play Daggerfall all that much. I may need to do something about that someday. This has been Double Negative. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you on the next presentation of the Elder Scrolls lore.